Welcome to today's Daily Walk in Wisdom, where we are embarking on a new discourse, a new kind of wisdom. We're going to discover the kind of wisdom that we need when we're going through tough times when we're suffering. And so we are in the book of Job. It begins with, there was a man in the land of Uz named Job. And that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God, and eschewed evil. The reason why we read Ecclesiastes is because we needed to learn how to think right. We needed philosophical wisdom to help our minds to think right. The reason we read Job is because we want to feel right. Because for everybody, suffering is a feeling. And it can be different kinds of suffering, different ways of suffering in many different spheres. Nevertheless, it boils down in the end to this sense that we have within ourselves that everything is wrong and everything is against me, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this. So the suffering life. And how can I feel right when I'm going through a struggle, when I'm going through suffering, when I'm hurting, when I'm broken? How can I feel right during those occasions? That's what we want to know. Because we feel wrong, and we need to be able to feel right, because we're not just thinking beings, we are feeling beings. So how can we endure the trouble without living in the trauma? The Bible addresses all those Christians who think that life should be one blessing after another, living in bliss, blessed in the morning, blessed in the evening, and blessed everywhere in between. And it says, what about Job? Job ought to be mandatory reading for every Pentecostal and charismatic Christian, because the experiential side of religion has so overdosed on Christus Victor theology that it gives Christians no permission to go through hardship. And it certainly offers no tools wherewith we're able to negotiate sickness and suffering and grief. Basically, we're just told, get over it. We're told, you're a Christian, you should be smiling. We're told, you're meant to be living in victory. So why all of this doom and gloom, and why this depression? That's why we need Job, the oldest of books in Scripture, written by Moses and set amongst the wisdom literature of the Bible, so we might learn how to live wisely when we're suffering. But we get ahead of ourselves. In our introduction, we're told Job is perfect and upright. Solomon went on a quest for wisdom. You may remember when we were going through Ecclesiastes, that in his searching, he said he came across only one upright man in 1,000. Well, Job is your 1 in 1,000, and he's called perfect. Job is actually an Old Testament representation of Jesus. Solomon represents the wisdom of Jesus, for he said that one greater than Solomon is here. Psalms represent the royalty of Jesus, because Jesus is called the son of David, and David wrote the bulk of Psalms. But Job represents the suffering Christ. And Job also represents the perfection of Christ. The perfect life, Job was said to be perfect. The perfect life begins with the fear of God. It said, there was a man in the land of Uz named Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God. and eschewed evil. The perfect life begins with the fear of God. Now, fear God is a phrase we're introduced to in the oldest book in the Oldest Testament. Think of it as the ancients' way of saying, have faith in God. It's the necessary prerequisite for discovering the wisdom that you need as you journey through suffering. So in other words, Job is telling us the fear of God is the beginning of this kind of wisdom. You need this before you enter your strife. It'll be the one thing that keeps your life intact, the thing that anchors your ship in place through the raging storm. Without the fear of God, you'll be lost at sea. And then it says that he was upright. The fear of God establishes a fixed point of reference beyond the world that is filled with trouble, and it enables you to remain upright when adversity threatens to lay you down. Before he hit the wall, Job was upright. There was something right about him, and he was up. In other words, he was vertical. Fearing God causes your vertical relationship, your relationship with God, to be right. If you can't be upright when things are going well, then you'll be wretched when trouble comes, when the next pandemic arrives, or when your car crashes, or when the house burns down. There's something about trouble. It will either bring out the best or the worst in you. So you want to get yourself up and right now, before the trouble comes. And then it says that he eschewed evil. He avoided seduction. He steered clear of depravity. Wasn't predisposed to addictive behavior. Wasn't a drunkard. Didn't fool around. In other words, he had integrity. You could rely on Job for doing the right thing. Job lived before Moses received the law, most likely during that era that the dispensationalists like to call the dispensation of civil government. That's after the flood, but before the patriarchs. Nevertheless, even though the law had not yet been given, he worshipped God, and he turned his back on anything that might corrupt his nature. So now, we know that with the death and resurrection of Christ, everything has changed. Now we no longer live with a dispensationalist mentality. Now we live in the new covenant mentality. And Christ has become our perfection, and we're made perfect in him. But on the other hand, nothing really has changed. For all that we are called to do is worship God and keep ourselves undefiled by the systems of this world. Do that, and you're on the road to perfecting your life. God bless you. That's the beginning of our walk and our journey through the land of wisdom in suffering, concentrating upon the book of Job. We'll see you again tomorrow for some more wisdom.